So as per Ishan Sharma's request, I am reviewing the Westside book of training methods by Louis Simmons today. So first of all, just a little background on the Westside Barbell training method. The Westside Barbell training method is a legendary multiply powerlifting training system that is based out of Columbus, Ohio, and was developed by Louis Simmons. So it has produced some of the best lifters in the last few decades consistently, and also has shattered new performances every time. It is a very unique system in the sense that it combines the use of heavy singles, speed work, and classic bodybuilding, and puts them all together to actually increase your power lifts in a manner that rotates exercises very frequently, and does not use a block periodization system or any kind of like long-term periodization as compared to other systems. So the Westside Barbell book of training methods is, well, it is the main book that you have to read if you ever want to apply the system on yourself or on someone else's training. Without it, you don't really have the complete picture. And also, it comes directly from Westside Barbell itself, since it is written by Louis Simmons, the developer of the system. So without that, you don't really know what the Westside Barbell system actually consists of. Alongside that, you also have to understand that the Westside Barbell system is not really one system as much as it is a template, and a lot of things are inserted within that. And if you haven't really read this book, you're not actually familiar with how to apply that template and how to mold it into various requirements. So first of all, it's not a traditional book. It comes off more like a collection of articles. So if you're not already familiar with the Westside Barbell training method, this really isn't a good place to start. And by the way, also if you're a novice or you're a person who has been training for anything less than 2 years, it really doesn't make sense to pick up this book, because none of this will make sense. And a lot of it is based on appealing to the personal experience of the lifter, and a lot of assumptions go into that, including that you've already faced those heavy weights, you know what it feels like, you're familiar with the background of sports science, and at least generally familiar with lifting. So if you're not familiar with all of those things, the book is largely going to be nonsense. So I would suggest that if you just want to start or you want to understand the system, the 8 Keys to Strength by Dave Tate and the Education of a Powerlifter, I think both of them are on the Elite FTS site, and I think they're also there on T Nation. Those are excellent places to start and are very well written, and simplify the system to a level where everyone can understand. Now, as far as the book itself, as far as we come to the book itself, to be perfectly honest, Louis Simmons is not a good writer. He's a great coach, and he clearly, cares about his competitors. He takes care of them. He pays attention to every single need, and he adjusts everything personally. That being said, he doesn't really write very well. His writing style is very repetitive and circular, and he uses very long sentences and really doesn't have a knack of simplifying it. In fact, I feel like if it wasn't for Jim Wendler and Dave Tate, who are both excellent writers, by the way, the Westside Barbell system wouldn't actually be known outside Westside Barbell. Now, of course, you must understand that the popularity of the system is largely based on the accomplishments of its lifters and not so much how well Louis Simmons writes. But again, this process has been greatly facilitated by the presence of Jim Wendler and Dave Tate, because of which we actually are able to understand the system. However, assuming that you've already read the work of Jim Wendler and Dave Tate and you already understand some of the basics, then this book is actually very good. Because what it does is focus on the day-to-day adjustments you have to make to training in order to make the system work. And not a lot of not a lot of books do that actually. A lot of books give you the system. They give you the overall picture, and they even give you, how to progress exercises and stuff. But they really don't deal with how to deal with day-to-day problems. Stuff like, if your grip is hurting in the deadlift, what do you do? Should you use 2 grips or 3 grips when you're bench pressing for speed? How fast is should speed work be? Is it really necessary to rest that long between sets? Or even little decisions that you have to make, like you came into the gym, your pec is not feeling that great. Should you back off on the max effort work? Should you use a variation? Should you not do the max effort work at all? How often should you do max effort work? How should you make that decision? All these things are covered in this book, and these are largely day-to-day adjustments, and the book largely focuses on that, the day-to-day adjustments you have to make while using the Westside Barbell system. The thing is that if you look at the system objectively just by its template, it's not really meant for advanced lifters. It's meant more for an intermediate lifter, because it gives way more variety than is appropriate for a beginner, but also gives gives too much auto-regulation also for a beginner. But at the same time, it has constant exposure to heavy weights, because of it doesn't really seem to be appropriate for an advanced lifter. But in this book, he actually lays down the day-to-day adjustments that you make for each level. So actually you get a better idea of how this system is modified for different levels. So for example, in his articles, you will understand that he doesn't actually make beginners do max effort work or rotate exercises all the time. Rather, their efforts are focused on GPP and the use of general exercises in order to strengthen the body, as well as doing some max effort work more in the 5 repetition range. And dynamic effort work is a lot heavier by comparison. It's using more straight weight, and there's a lot more emphasis on general fitness. And once that base of fitness has been built, then they start using heavier lifts. In fact, the article Education of a Powerlifter by Dave Tate also draws the same parallel, where a beginner progresses to more and more heavy and specialized methods as they progress in their career. And similarly, the degree of auto-regulation that is provided by the system allows it to be used by advanced lifters, even though the design itself may not seem like it. And again, you wouldn't really get that if you just knew the template. You would only be able to interpret that by reading this book, which is why I think that if you intend to use the method, you really have to read this book in order to apply it properly. One last thing I'd like to say about this is less to do with this book per se and more to do with the Westside training method itself. Louis Simmons keeps claiming that this system is Russian. In all honesty, it really isn't. It's very rooted in American methodology. I would say that it is inspired by Russian thinking in terms of the structure and in terms of managing the loads. But in terms of the actual basic mindset, it's very American. Like the American mindset to powerlifting is get brutally strong and get big and strong. Take the body to a limit, and this will stimulate strength and size gains. Then you rest a little bit and you come back in order to break a PR. And fundamentally, all the 3 methods that are espoused in this training method, the maximal effort method, the dynamic effort method, and the repetition effort method, they sort of intend to take the body to the limit. Even the dynamic effort method that's done for multiple sets, the focus is on maximal force output. So you aren't really holding back at any point. And besides that, all these assistance exercises that you do are mostly done for repetitions, and far more repetitions than is normally done in a traditional power building program. So in many ways, it is a combination of bodybuilding and just putting in max effort. And in that sense, it actually encapsulates the basic Western methodology, which is to take the body to failure and get improvements from that. It's kind of like the idea of shocking the muscles. Even the whole idea of rotating exercises is a very American idea. In order to shock the muscles, you have to try something new. In order to fix a groove, you must try something from a different angle. Whereas the Russian method really isn't like that. The Russian method treats strength training as practice. And you do a lot of sets and a lot of reps with medium efforts, somewhere between 70 to 85% all the time, in order to develop confidence with heavy weights and perfect technique. And the variety is very limited compared to what Louis Simmons introduces in the Westside Barbell system. Also, please remember that the kind of variety that's there in weightlifting is largely in terms of positions and not in terms of exercises itself. Like, for example, a snatch variation would be a pause snatch at the knee, or a hang snatch, or maybe a snatch from the blocks. But it wouldn't be something like snatch with a safety squat bar or snatch with bands. And despite Louis Simmons' claim in the book that bands can be used to develop high pulls and all that, I have never actually seen any documented evidence of this in weightlifting. So I would say that the kind of variety that's being introduced here is entirely different from the kind of variety that he says weightlifters use, which is important, but is also not really the same thing. You're still maintaining the same concepts of timing, which of course Louis Simmons does pay attention to. Like, there's a lot of effort dedicated to explaining the concept of speed and what is the correct amount of time or maximal effort lift should take and all of that. So in that sense, he does sort of mishmash both the methods. But again, please make no mistake, this is largely American method. If you're opening this book and hoping to get some insights into how what Russians work you can refer to in order to get the proof for this method, it really doesn't exist, because even if you go back to the works that he refers, it really doesn't prove his point. Okay, I've read a lot of those books and I can say that they really don't prove his point. But you must appreciate the system for what it is, which in many ways is the ultimate power building system. And in that, it's an excellent system. So I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you have any suggestions for what I should review next, please comment below. And hopefully I'll see you guys next week.